Welcome to Papa's Workshop. Today I want to build the drawers for my new workbench, and it was a matter of going back to that scrap bin and digging out everything that I could find because I want to build this with no cost. I just want to use the scraps around the shop. So let's get started building these drawers for the workbench. A day in the shop with Papa in Papa's Workshop. To support my channel, please go to patreon.com/Papa's Workshop. In today's video, I'm building the drawers for the workbench, and I'm also building the handles as well. No cost to this project. Now, when I was looking for material, I have to be able to have a drawer front. And I only have one piece of plywood that's wide enough to be able to make these drawer fronts. So I have to cut that first. And then any scraps left over, I'll be able to use to make the frames in here. Because I need the frames in here to be able to support the drawer rollers and the drawers. So I'll need a piece of wood across the back and pieces that run through here to be able to support the drawer. And of course, I need the material to build the drawers itself. Now, what I'm planning on doing for the drawers is using a 1/2-inch piece of plywood. And I've got one piece that's a fairly good size, and then I've got several little small scrap pieces. And with careful measuring, I think I can get everything out of it. As far as the bottom of the drawers, I'm using a 5mm thick plywood to be able to have that. And that's a challenge too. I'm measuring that very carefully to see if I'm going to have enough. Again, I don't want to buy anything for this workbench. I want to be able to have everything already in the shop and use all the scraps that I can. And when you start looking around the shop, it's amazing what you can actually find in that scrap bin. I actually never thought that I would find enough to build all of this workbench, but it looks like I'm going to be able to do it. Now, the first thing I have to do, because of the plywood that I have available, is I need to cut these drawer fronts. Now, this opening is 6 inches, so my drawer fronts need to be 6 3/4. That will give me 3/8 above and below this opening. So 6 3/4 is what I need to cut it, and of course I'll need 3 of them. While you're watching me cut out these various parts for the drawer build, please take just a moment and go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I would really appreciate it. And hit the little bell notification next to it. And if you like the content that I'm producing and you're learning a few things along the way, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. It really does help, because the algorithms that YouTube has these days is just kind of crazy. And I really would appreciate that, because that's the only way that I can continue making these types of videos, if I have people watching, enjoying, and learning new skills. So again, as a reminder, hit that little subscribe button and the bell notification and give me a thumbs up. Now that the drawer faces are cut out, it's time to move over to the router table. I want to soften the edge on the front of these. And to do that, I'm using a 1/4 inch round over bit. People have also asked, how do I prevent the tear out? Well, the most important thing that you can do is cut the end grain first. So you see, as I cut this, I cut the end grain on the one end, I flip it around, and I cut the end grain on the other. And then I go in this direction with the grain. That is the single most important thing to be able to prevent the tear out. And if you'll follow that step, that should help you out an awful lot. So hopefully that question will be answered, because I know a lot of people have asked it over time. Now, the first thing I have to do is put this back piece in to be able to support the drawer sides. And I'm also going to put a piece of the plywood in here just for a little bit of reinforcement, because this board is really not long enough. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece in here for each side, and then I'll measure and screw this one in, and that will provide the support that I need for the back of the drawers. So I have these two cut. I'm going to slip it in, and that's a perfect fit. I'll screw them in a moment. Now on this side, I'm going to go ahead and measure exactly where I want this back piece, and I want it the same height as the bottom on the front. And that will give me the support from the front to the rear of the workbench for the drawer slides itself. With the 2 end pieces that I cut and installed, now it's time to go ahead and put this piece in. Now I've already measured exactly where it needs to be, so it's just a matter of lining it up right to that pencil line and then being able to screw it in position. Now those 2 end pieces that I put in really were not necessary. I put it in mainly because the piece of board that I have for the back was too short, and I needed to be able to have that work, and the only way I could do it is put those 2 end pieces in. But at any rate, I'm just going to go ahead and screw this into position and move on. And of course, I can't forget to screw in those end pieces as well. Now it's getting to be really interesting. I've got the back piece in and it's supported. Now I'm trying to get the side pieces in for the drawers that will support the drawer rollers. And I'm starting to run out of plywood. So I'm having to find little scraps here and there that are long enough that I can make the pieces that I need. So after getting all the pieces cut to length, I'm going to go ahead and start installing them. Now this first piece along the side is just a single piece of the plywood, and I align it to the bottom edge, and that will give me enough room to be able to attach the drawer slides. And then of course I nail it in position. And I had the first side rail in that was going to hold the drawer rollers. That was in, and it's only nailed here on the front. The back is still loose. The reason being, I need to be able to make sure that everything is square. Now the next ones are going to be the ones that go right in here, and I'm going to go ahead and nail those 2 together and make one component out of it. When I nail these 2 together, this measurement right here is exactly the dimension of the stile. And that way it'll be flush on each side and it'll accept the drawer roller perfectly. And for this, I'm using a 1-inch staple on both sides. Now that I've made one component out of, it's easy to be able to align it and be able to nail it into position. And I'm doing that for both of these center pieces. On the front of these are all nailed in. So what I need to do now is make sure that the back is perfectly square in this opening, and then I can nail the back side. Come on. All right, this center one, if I measure from right here to there is 27.5. Measuring this way, it is 27.5. So this compartment is square. I'm going to go ahead and shoot these 2 in position, and then we'll work on the ends. So at this point, the frame is completely done now, and it's ready to go ahead and put the drawer rollers in it and be able to build some drawers. There's many different type of drawer rollers that you can use. So follow the instructions when you install them. As you can see here, I've got them installed and we're ready to move on to the drawer. I managed to find enough plywood to be able to cut the drawer size to the proper length and width. Now it's time to go ahead and cut the rabbet joint. And to do this, I'm just raising up the blade halfway to cut halfway through the material. And I'm using the thickness of the plywood to set the width that I need. It's a lot better than a tape measure. And that by far is the most accurate way to do it. And then from there, it's just a matter of being able to cut it, and you'll have a perfect rabbet joint to accept the sides. So there's no tape measure involved in this. And now that I have the piece cut, all I want to do is show you just how well that fits together. That's what you're looking for on the rabbet joint. It's perfectly smooth and flush, and it's a good solid joint. Now I need to go ahead and cut the dado to accept the plywood for the bottom of the drawer. To assemble the drawer is really very easy. I started with the back sitting on the workbench, and then I'll put the bottom in. Now there's no glue necessary for this, but I am using the glue and those 1-inch staples to be able to secure it together. And yes, I'm using plenty of glue for this part. But this will help hold the drawer together and keep it solid for many years to come. Now as I attach the sides, they just slip right into that groove and right into that rabbet that I cut just a few moments ago. And all I need to do is just make sure that I have a good tight fit and wipe off the excess glue. Now as far as putting in this top piece, or in essence it's the back of the drawer, this one's done a little bit different. I actually not having this fit into a dado. I cut this one a little bit thinner, and of course I'm going to put the glue in, but I want you to see this. I have not shown this before. And I will also put a link in the description below where I have done the different drawer builds in the past. But this one fits right into the rabbet joints on each side, and then it slides up flush to the drawer bottom. With everything now assembled and aligned, and I have to make sure that it's all square, then I'll be able to use the staples and staple it together. Staples are actually stronger than the nails, and that will make this drawer last a long time. Now this is the part that I wanted to show you. This drawer bottom actually gets stapled to that back. And that's a good strong method to be able to hold it. And like I said, this is a little bit different than what I've used before, and it just shows one more technique on being able to build the drawers. Last thing I always do is just double check to make sure that the drawer is actually square. And with that, the first one is done. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach the drawer rollers at this time. And because I'm using plywood with these drawer rollers, I'm actually putting the screws into the side. That actually creates a stronger bond between that screw and those threads. If you screw it into the bottom, which is acceptable for using these type of drawer slides, but what happens, it will split the plywood itself, and you don't want that. So if you're using plywood for the drawers, screw the drawer rollers into the side to prevent that plywood from breaking. With the first drawer completed, let's go ahead and put it in and test it out. It just drops in, slides in, there we go. That's perfect. That's what we need. 2 more to go. I want to give you a quick tip. After you put the drawer roller on that first side, grab a scrap piece of plywood and put it on your workbench. That way when you flip the drawer over, you can set the drawer onto that scrap piece of plywood and give a solid surface to be able to work with. Otherwise, that drawer roller at the bottom is going to cause a problem, and it's going to be difficult to work with it. That plywood underneath there saves the day and makes it so much easier. Now I need to make some handles for these drawers, and I think that this little piece of scrap 1x whatever is going to work just fine. Because I can just cut this strip off right here, and I think that will give me enough to make the 3 handles. So after cutting the wood down to 3/4 by 3/4, I set up the table saw to be able to cut the handle individual parts. So I need 3 of them this length, and then I'm going to cut some smaller pieces to be able to have on each end. Now the goal for this is I wanted from center to center, when I drilled the holes into the drawer faces, to be 5 inches. And I wanted this to be able to be a nice, easy to grip handle, and I wanted to be able to have it be able to stand out away from the drawer front, roughly about 7/8 of an inch. That gives a nice handhold to be able to reach in and grab that door, and it's very comfortable. Now because these are some very small pieces that I'm cutting, I'm using the end of a pencil with the pencil eraser to be able to hold that. You don't want your fingers that close to the saw blade. Now you can design your handles any way that you wish, or you can just go down to the hardware store and buy some. But in keeping with the fact that I wanted to have this as a no-cost build, I needed to make my own handles. I did not have 3 handles that actually matched. And I actually like the shop-built handles for this workbench. I think it's a very nice touch that adds a little bit to the overall build. Now I decided to make these where it's tongue and groove. So I have the saw set up now to be able to cut the tongue on each of these pieces, and then on those small pieces I'll cut the groove. I like how this turned out. This is the tongue and it's perfectly smooth. Then I went ahead and cut the groove, and let's do a test fit. I think this is going to be perfect and it's going to have a nice look. That is just right. So from here I'm just going to go ahead and finish cutting all of them, and then I'm going to glue them all together, clamp them for a few minutes, and then shape them. Everything is cut now and it's time to assemble. So I'm putting plenty of glue on these surfaces because this is going to get a lot of rough and tough use over time, and I don't want it breaking. This glue should hold just fine. You can't use nails here, so you're relying on the glue, and that should work really well. So I'm just going to slip that in there, put a little clamp on it to hold it in place, wipe off the excess glue, and I'll set it aside. Now this is obviously an extra part that you don't really need to do. You could just go down to the hardware store and buy the handles, but then again, what fun is that? Back to the drawers themselves, I need to be able to mark the location and pre-drill to be able to put 2 screws in to be able to hold the face of the drawers. And basically what I did is just took that scrap piece of wood, no measurements, and marked it. And that gives me a nice space. Now from here, I'm just roughly establishing a center point, and I'm going to mark that and then drill the holes. I'm taking a scrap piece of wood and sliding it underneath the drawers. That way when I drill these 2 holes, it's not going to put a hole in my workbench. That would not be a good thing. I went ahead and screwed the screws in through the back of the drawer and actually had them sticking out just a little bit. Now I'm taking a tape measure, measuring 3/8 of an inch over. That way my drawer will be centered, and you also notice that piece of wood that I have clamped to the bottom. That gives my height perfect, so it's going to be even all the way across with all 3 of the drawers. I now have all of the drawers and faces attached, so it's time to take off that little scrap wood, and you can see there's perfect alignment. And these work great. I am very pleased with how this turned out. Now let's go ahead and shape up the handles and get the handles put on. Well, it's back to the router table. I want to give you a quick look. These now look very good. I sanded them just a little bit, and at the router table I'm using a 1/4 inch round over bit again to be able to just soften the edges on these handles. And I want you to, everybody, to please remember safety first. When you're working with small parts around any tool, you have to be very careful. Now I feel comfortable being able to use the router table in this manner. If you don't, figure out a different way, or just go to the hardware store and buy your own handles. Be safe, that's the most important thing. Now I want you to look at this True Position tools that I've shown before. It's excellent for this application. I want to show you how easy it is to set it up. That drawer face is 7 inches, so I just want it in the middle, so that just slides down to the 3.5 inch position. The drawer handles that I made are 5 inches, so from the center point, that would be out 2.5 inches. We'll tighten that right there. Put this one at 2.5. And then the same thing on my drawer. Half of that would be 9 3/4. And this is set up. It is ready to be able to go and drill the holes. It's just that fast. And then to be able to use the jig, you just simply come over here and put it across the top, line it up with this side right there, and you're ready to drill the holes. And there we we go. That is done. That's just how easy it is. And then this is going to fit on there perfectly. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process now for the other two drawers. I need to mark the center of this, so I just slip it in here, just like that. Mark it, rotate it, slide it back in, and that gives me the center. And because I'm using the wood screws, all I need to be able to do is just use an awl, put a little hole in the bottom, and that will do just nicely. And that's all that's necessary. I'm using an 1 5/8 wood screw to be able to attach these handles. And all I can do is just slip them through the hole. It's a good size. And then I can just use the screwdriver and tighten that handle on. And just like that, the handle's on, fits perfect, and there we go. It just slides in and out exactly the way that I want it. Well, the workbench is all finished now, and the drawers work perfectly. I love the handles. All I have to do now is decide what color I want to paint it. And I still have some paint here in the shop that I'll be able to use. Again, this is a no-cost project, so I think it turned out pretty good. Let me give you a quick look, close-up of these handles. I think they turned out fantastic. I want to be able to either paint these or stain these. I'm not sure which yet. So if you got some ideas, leave me some comments down in the bottom on how I should handle that. Well, I did it. It's all done. And it didn't cost me anything other than 4 wheels. The rest of it was all just scraps in the shop. Right down to the handles. Even took a scrap piece of wood and made the handles. So if you like this video today, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and the little bell next to it so you're going to be notified on the different videos that I upload. You're not going to want to miss this. I still have a lot of videos planned. So I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in my shop on the next video. This was a fun project to be able to design and build using the scraps and using a few unconventional methods along the way. These handles I think turned out great, and it was a good use of a little piece of scrap wood. Now in the description below, I'll go ahead and link the first video where I did the actual build of the workbench, and I'll link this video as well so that you'll be able to see from beginning to end regardless of which video that you look at first. And don't forget, take a look at these other videos that you are seeing in front of you. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you in my shop.